Hey, Edward, I forgot my pen at the office. Go back and get it. That was my boss, Thomas. And to top it off, we're overseas. When we arrived at the hotel, there wasn't even a room reserved for me. Everyone else on this business trip with us burst into laughter at Thomas's comment. I let out a deep sigh. Ugh. This is too much. This is straight up harassment. Thinking that, I walked away. Should I just go back to Japan? The thought crossed my mind, but my name is Edward. I'm 30 years old. I'm actually in charge of tomorrow's business meeting. I was fed up with Thomas's constant bullying. So, I took a cab to the airport and made a call. There was no flight back to Japan. I ended up calling my uncle who lives in the US for the first time in ages. My aunt answered the phone. Hello? Oh, Auntie? It's Edward. This is sudden, but can I come over? I'll be there in about 2 hours. Soon after, I arrived at my uncle's house. Ed. Long time no see. Did something happen? My aunt asked with concern. I explained the situation and decided to stay at my uncle's place for the night. That evening, when my uncle came home from work, we reminisced about the old days. Even though I'm 30 now, I found myself reflecting on my life a bit. I grew up with my dad, who ran a small factory, and my mom, who worked as an office clerk there. My maternal grandmother lived nearby, all alone. I would wait at her house when my parents worked late. She also picked me up and dropped me off at daycare, and as an only child, I was really close to her. When I started elementary school, my parents were strict about my studies, so I went to a nearby cram school and an English class. There, I often saw Madeline, a friend from daycare. We lived close to each other. At school, all the kids talked about video games. Neither Madeline nor I had one. We were in the same class, but we didn't quite fit in with the others, so we often felt like outsiders. One day after school, Madeline mumbled, "I wish I could play video games too." I felt the same way. One day, I begged my grandma, "Grandma, I really want a video game." "I'll study hard, I promise." Being soft-hearted, she whispered, "Let's keep this between us," and bought me a game console. It came with 2 controllers. I was so excited, I could hardly contain myself. Madeline lived in a pretty big house, but her parents were strict about studying too, so I secretly invited her over to my grandma's after school. Madeline told her parents she was studying with friends, then came over. We would finish our homework first, then enjoy playing games together. But we kept it a secret from everyone at school. If our parents found out, we'd be in big trouble. Madeline and I were close friends until 3rd grade. But around that time, my mother passed away from illness. I broke down in tears. I cried day after day, as if I was using up a lifetime's worth of tears. I cried until I had no tears left. I even stopped going to school for a while. Then, my grandmother moved in with us to help take care of my father and handle household chores. I was in such shock that I couldn't speak. At the funeral, my uncle, my mother's younger brother, was also sobbing uncontrollably. Looking back, my grandmother must have been devastated too, having lost her daughter. My father kept a strong face as we held a small funeral, and my grandmother held back her tears. I ended up not attending school for an entire year. I also stopped going to cram school and stayed shut in my room. Later on, my uncle and aunt were transferred to a company in the US, and my uncle invited me to come to America. So, I flew to the US. My aunt and uncle, who had no children of their own, treated me with great care in America. As my environment completely changed, I gradually adjusted to life overseas. Both my aunt and uncle helped me with my studies at my American school. I went on to graduate from middle school and high school in the US, and I worked hard enough to get into a prestigious American university. There was also a man named Joseph, my uncle's best friend, who often visited their house since I was in elementary school. He always called me Ed and treated me kindly. I learned a lot from Joe, especially when it came to studying. After graduating from college, my grandmother's health deteriorated, so I returned to Japan. Following my uncle's advice, I joined my current company. My background was kept a secret, known only to President Owens and the HR department. At first, I was assigned to the General Affairs department. In the company cafeteria, I saw a sales department office worker who felt strangely familiar. But I couldn't quite remember who she was. The company wasn't a big one at the time, but it was a real estate firm. While working in the General Affairs department, I earned my real estate broker's license. Back in middle school, my uncle had bought me a computer, and I loved it. When the internet became widespread, I communicated with many people online. I was comfortable conversing in both English and Japanese. In the General Affairs department, I mainly handled organizing documents. Since I got off work on time, I could also keep an eye on my grandmother. However, her condition started to change. Since I had Wednesdays off, I took her to the hospital. As I suspected, my grandmother had dementia. And it was a severe case. My father and I had no choice but to put her in a care facility. A while later, my father remarried. His new wife took over the household chores. I rented a small one-room apartment near the office and started living on my own. One day, at the company's year-end party, the sales department office worker I had been curious about came up to me. "Edward, don't you remember me?" "Ha! I'm Madeline." "It's me, Madeline." "Wait, you're Madeline from elementary school?" "Yes." "Isn't it nostalgic?" I was shocked. I never would have guessed that the Madeline who lived nearby when we were kids was now standing in front of me. She had become quite beautiful, and with her makeup, I hadn't recognized her at all. After that, Madeline quietly slipped me a small note and returned to her seat. The note had Madeline's contact information written on it. The next evening, I sent her a quick message, just saying, "Good job today." Madeline replied, asking, "How have you been since then? Want to grab a meal sometime?" So, I agreed. We ended up having dinner at a family restaurant. I told Madeline about how I had gone overseas and about my time in college, and I asked her to keep it a secret from the other employees. Madeline had apparently graduated from a prestigious private middle and high school, then went on to Tokyo University before getting a job. We both decided to keep our backgrounds a secret from others. Madeline, too, was living alone at the time, and after that, we started going out for meals together more often. At the time, we were both 24. I remained in the General Affairs department for a while, but one day, President Owens called me in. "Edward, we're short on sales staff right now. Would you be willing to transfer to the sales department?" "Mr. Owens, I'm not really good at sales." "Take your time, Edward. You're talented, and I believe you'll get the hang of it little by little." "Thank you. I'll give it a try." And so, I was transferred to the sales department the following week. I greeted Thomas and the other sales staff as I sat down at my new desk. Madeline, the office worker for the sales department, smiled warmly. At first, I shadowed my senior colleagues, learning the ropes by greeting clients and picking up on their sales talk. During my time as a student in America, I had become more outgoing, enjoying English and making many friends. But after returning to Japan, I reverted to being introverted, and sales made me incredibly anxious. I confided in Madeline about my struggles, and she sent me encouraging messages. I started working in sales at the age of 28, but I struggled to land contracts. One day, Thomas asked, "Edward, where did you graduate from?" "Oh, it wasn't anything special." "Figures. You millennials. You need to set more appointments and hustle harder." "Yes, Thomas." Understood. Thomas was around 40 years old. And that's when my nightmare began. No matter the weather, whether freezing or scorching, I was running around chasing sales leads. But I still couldn't close any deals. "Hey, useless Edward. Just sit down and organize the documents today." "Yes, Thomas." Understood. As I said that, Thomas handed me a mountain of paperwork. It was so heavy I nearly tripped. The other sales guys burst out laughing. I sat at my desk, facing the computer, starting to sort through the documents. There was no way I could finish this in one day. "Thomas, when do you need these documents completed by?" "Useless Edward, this will probably take you ages." "You've got 3 days. And if you can't finish, stay late but don't expect overtime pay." I understand," I replied in a low voice. Could I really finish this in 3 days? The documents needed to be prepared for each sales rep, including contract creation and client details, all meticulously typed without errors. It seemed like a new residential development had started in a somewhat distant area. The sales team was busy running around for negotiations with the construction company there. Once they secured a contract, I'd verify it and pass it along to Thomas. Balancing that with my document preparation duties was overwhelming. The company had started small, but it was gradually growing since I joined. Even I was starting to feel disappointed in my lack of sales ability. When the workday ended, everyone went home. But then, Madeline showed up at the office with lunch and some coffee. "Edward, I brought you some food. Let's eat together, and I'll help you organize the documents." "Thanks, Madeline. I really don't think I'm cut out for sales. But it means a lot that you're here." Thomas has always been like that, moody and short-tempered. Even when you were in the General Affairs Department, new sales employees were yelled at, made to do paperwork, and some ended up quitting. With your background, you could have easily joined a bigger company. Why did you choose this one? "Oh, it was through my uncle's recommendation." I did consider working for an international company, but at that time, my grandmother's health was declining. She had taken care of me, so I was worried about her. That's why I asked to be placed in the General Affairs Department, where there was no overtime. I figured there'd be a lot of client dinners and sales. I see. So, President Owens and your uncle know each other? Yeah, apparently they were classmates. Wow, just like us. Well, we were only together from daycare through elementary school, but still. I was so happy back then when we could play video games at your grandmother's house. Those were good times. Yeah, they really were. You've grown up so much, Madeline, I didn't recognize you at all. How did you even remember me? Well, you look the same. You haven't changed since back then. Yeah, I do get told I look young for my age. We chatted and laughed while sharing the food she brought. These documents are actually supposed to be my job as the office clerk. Leave it to me. Thanks. Madeline took some of the paperwork and sat at her desk to help me. But by then, it was already 10 p.m. Madeline, it's getting late. You should head home soon, it's not safe. You're right. Are you going to keep working? I'll stay for a little longer, but I'll be heading out soon. Don't overdo it. See you tomorrow. I thanked her and let her leave first. I figured I could push through a bit longer. After using some eye drops, I decided to call it a night around 1 a.m. Since my apartment was close to the office, I walked home slowly. I just took a quick shower and went to bed for a few hours. The next morning, I got to work early and resumed the document processing. It still felt like there was no end in sight. I had been typing away at the computer nonstop since morning. But thanks to Madeline's help, I had made significant progress. However, a senior colleague handed me another stack of documents. At the 10 a.m. break, Madeline brewed coffee for everyone. Hey, Edward. At least make yourself useful and brew the coffee. You can't do anything else, so start pulling your weight. Oh, I'm sorry. Madeline had a puzzled look on her face. The other senior colleagues were smirking. Just as I was about to take my lunch break. Edward, do you really think you have time to take a break? Are the documents going to be done? I'll be right back. Saying that, I quickly ate a sandwich and returned to the office. Well, it's not like eating more would help, I'd probably just get sleepy anyway. Once again, I worked overtime into the evening. Madeline brought lunch again today and came to help me. I clocked out but continued working. Madeline arrived shortly after. Madeline, you came again? Thanks so much. No problem. It's not like I have anyone waiting for me at home anyway. But, as I was going through these documents, I realized that a lot of them aren't even necessary right now. This is just Thomas messing with you. Yeah, I figured as much. But with my poor sales record, I don't have much of a choice. Thomas is such a jerk. Madeline fumed, visibly angry. Her expression reminded me of when we were kids, playing games, and she'd get upset whenever I beat her. Her smile was cute, but her angry face had its own charm too. I had plenty of female friends in America, but they were just friends, none of them were ever my girlfriend. Lately, though, I've started to feel myself being drawn to Madeline. Despite being so beautiful, she told me she wasn't seeing anyone special. That night, we finished work around 9 p.m., and I walked Madeline to the station. It seemed like I would be able to submit everything by the third day. The next day, I took the initiative to make coffee for everyone at 10 a.m. Madeline came into the break room. How's it going? Will you finish in time? I'll make the coffee, you just need to carry it. Thanks. I should be able to finish everything by noon, thanks to your help. If I don't deliver the coffee myself, Thomas will probably yell at me again. When I said that to Madeline, she simply made the coffee and returned to the office. I carried the coffee to everyone's desks. Thomas scowled but didn't say anything. I went back to my desk. Just then, the phone rang. It was an internal call from President Owens. Edward, could you come to my office for a moment? Yes, Mr. Owens. I'll be right there. I hung up the phone. Thomas, I've been called to Mr. Owens's office. I'll be back soon. Knowing you, it's probably a demotion. Go get scolded properly. Ignoring him, I headed to the president's office, where I was invited to sit on the couch. Edward, how's the sales work going? Mr. Owens, I'm really sorry. I haven't been doing well at all. Right now, I'm helping Thomas with document sorting. I see. Sorry to hear that. We're about to enter negotiations with some overseas clients, and I'd like you to handle the materials. We don't have many employees proficient in English. I understand. And that was the end of our conversation. I went back to the office and finished Thomas's documents by noon, handing them over to him. What's this? So, it wasn't a demotion after all? You finally finished the documents, huh? Useless people sure take their time. Thomas sneered as he looked through the papers. The other employees gave me smug smiles. A little later, President Owens entered the office. Mr. Owens. Good afternoon. All the employees stood up to greet him. I did the same and greeted him as well. Thomas, I have some materials I'd like Edward to handle. Would that be all right? Sure. Edward's no good at sales anyway. With that, President Owens handed me the documents. I took them and looked through them. They were materials about an American resort located in Japan. I started drafting the proposal in English. Then, I compiled the information in Japanese. Since English is my strong suit, I finished the materials quickly. I brought the finished documents to the president's office, where President Owens reviewed them for about 30 minutes. As expected of you, Edward. Please wait here for a moment. After President Owens said that, I sat on the sofa and waited. Then, he made a phone call to someone. Joseph, thanks as always. The documents are ready. Let me hand the phone to Edward for a moment. Feeling a bit puzzled, I took the phone from President Owens. Hello, this is Edward. Hey, Ed. It's me, Joseph, your uncle's friend. What? Joe? Wow, it's been so long. I'm really surprised. You sound well, Ed. That makes me happy. I was the one who asked Mr. Owens to handle this resort project. Your uncle is doing great, too. I'd love to sit down and have a proper chat with you. Could you come to the US? Joe, so this project was from you? Of course, I'd be happy to. I'll definitely make the trip. Thanks, Ed. I'd like you to bring your boss and senior colleagues with you. I'll review the documents later and pass the details to Mr. Owens. Yes, I understand. I responded, still surprised, and handed the phone back to President Owens. Then, President Owens and Joseph exchanged a few more words before ending the call. Afterward, President Owens said, Joseph Howard, the CEO, was actually my classmate back in college. What? Joseph is a CEO? That's surprising. Yes, he is. It's going to be a big project, so if a business trip to the US is arranged, I'll make sure to let Thomas know. I'm counting on you. Mr. Owens. I understand. This is a pretty major deal. Please do your best. I will do my utmost. Still in shock from the unexpected conversation with Joe, I bowed to President Owens and left his office. The overseas business trip was scheduled for the following week. Along with Thomas, a few senior colleagues, and myself, we headed to the US. I hear this is a big deal. Edward, make sure you don't try to show off, Thomas said on the plane. We arrived at the hotel in the US. However, my room was the only one missing. Thomas, it seems like I don't have a room. Your room? Oh, I forgot. Ha ha. By the way, I left my pen at the office, why don't you go back and get it? I stood there, stunned. As I mentioned earlier, I thought, this harassment is really over the top. And, saying, understood. As I turned to leave, everyone around me burst into laughter. Hiding my frustration, I turned my back on them and called my uncle. I then took a 2-hour trip from the airport to my uncle's house. My uncle was furious. Ed, it's been a while. To think they'd send you back during an important negotiation with Joseph. I'll let him know what's going on. My uncle explained everything to Joe, the CEO. The next day, Thomas went to meet with Joe Howard. I had already contacted President Owens. He, too, was furious. Actually, Edward, I've been informed by Madeline about the harassment you've been facing from Thomas. What? Madeline is my niece, you see. She's my sister's daughter. Wait, really? Yes. She's told me a lot about you, Edward. I'll make sure Joseph gets the full details. Please hold tight for now. Sorry about this, Mr. Owens. I understand. I was once again taken aback. I decided to wait at my uncle's house. The meeting was scheduled for 1 p.m. the next day. My uncle and aunt were overjoyed to see me again after so long and prepared a feast for dinner. Ed, it seems your father has remarried. I know you were a great help to my mother. Thank you for all that you did for her. Uncle, it was nothing. I loved Grandma, and though she's in a care facility now, she's still doing well. Ed, thank you. My uncle said this, his eyes slightly teary. I hadn't seen my father in a long time, but I still visited Grandma from time to time. However, each visit became more painful as she no longer remembered who I was. It seemed dementia had cruelly taken away even our shared memories. But she always greeted me with a smile whenever I visited. As I reflected on my conversation with President Owens, I also remembered how Madeline had smiled warmly as she saw me off before I left for the U.S. I couldn't believe Madeline was actually President Owens's niece. I sent a message to Madeline. When I invited her out for a meal after I returned to Japan, she replied with a smiley face. That night, I stayed at my uncle's house. The next morning, I left early to avoid running into Thomas and headed to meet with Joe Howard, the CEO. Mr. Howard, thank you for meeting with me today. Ed, I'm glad you came. You've really grown up. Could you wait in the room at the back for a bit? I'm so happy to see you. Yes, I'll wait there. It seemed like Howard was planning to observe Thomas and the others before making any decisions. I hid in the back room, feeling a bit excited as I waited for Thomas and the senior colleagues who had mocked me to arrive. After that, I listened closely and heard what seemed to be an American man entering the room. Howard and the man were chatting in fluent English, laughing and enjoying their conversation. Then, Thomas and the 3 senior colleagues who had laughed at me arrived. Thomas handed over his business card and greeted Howard with a deep bow. Wait, aren't you missing someone? Oh, that guy? He's useless, so we sent him back to Japan. Useless? Edward? He's the reason we're even doing this deal. Thomas, was it? In that case, we'll cancel this $100 million contract. What? $100 million? Please, Mr. Howard, wait. At that moment, my phone started ringing, with Thomas calling me. I opened the door and stepped out of the back room. Thomas, the useless Edward is right here. What? You? I thought you went back to Japan to get my pen? Why would I go all the way back to Japan for a single pen? And I didn't even have a room to stay in. Oh, that. But, Edward, what's this about $100 million? Thomas, I had no idea about the amount either. Then why are you even here? Because this is an important deal, I said to Thomas, as I politely greeted the white client standing next to Howard. Thomas? What's this about a pen? Howard asked, and Thomas, trembling, responded nervously. Oh, that was just a misunderstanding. Edward, it seems Thomas isn't up to the task. Thomas, I did hear from both Edward and President Owens that Edward struggled with sales in Japan. But he's not useless. Now, can you give today's presentation in English? Well, I'm not that good with English. Ed, please take care of it. Both my uncle and Howard's CEO have always called me Ed. Thomas, surprised, muttered, Ed. Thomas, let me tell you something. I've known Edward since he was a child. He studied hard in America and graduated from Harvard. Harvard? Yes. So, he's far from useless. Ed, take it away. Ignoring the stunned faces of Thomas and the others, I opened my laptop and gave the presentation in fluent English. The client's eyes lit up with excitement, clearly impressed. Afterward, we chatted in native English about the best things Japan had to offer. Then, I shook hands firmly with the client, and we shared a hug. I also hugged Howard's CEO. The $100 million deal was a success. After that, Mr. Howard turned to Thomas and the others and said, I have no use for any of you. To think you treated Edward like he was worthless. Leave immediately. Thomas and the other three lowered their heads in defeat and left the room, shoulders slumped. I thanked Mr. Howard deeply, and he invited me to join him and the client for a celebratory meal. We strengthened our connection and then I returned to Japan. Back at the office, President Owens was furious with Thomas for the way he treated me and issued a demotion order. I was officially appointed as the head of the sales department by President Owens. As Thomas slumped and left the office, the senior colleagues who had laughed at me turned pale. Only Madeline greeted me with a smile. There was still one more thing I needed to do. With determination, I invited Madeline to a high-end restaurant and proposed to her. Madeline looked at the diamond ring I gave her, and with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face, she accepted my proposal. Our wedding was a grand celebration, with both Joe Howard and my uncle in attendance. During the event, President Owens announced that I was to be the future president of the company. And I was met with resounding applause from the many guests. Thomas, unhappy with his rural reassignment, chose to resign. The senior colleagues who had mocked me apologized for their behavior. The atmosphere at the company became peaceful, and with Madeline as my wife, I made a firm commitment to protect and lead the company together.